trends historically with teams. Covers.com. That's one of my favorite websites out there.
Is that free for folks?
Yeah, free. Covers.com and the Action Network. Those are two outlets that give out tons of free
Action
content.
Network's where Darren Rovell is, right?
It is.
God,
but
that guy has such great memorabilia.
It's something like that, man. Also, my good buddy Chase Howell works over there, so give a shout out to Chase. But
thank you for the good work, Chase.
Those are the two big outlets, and they'll basically they'll have betting previews of these games, talking about how these two teams faced, or if it's two teams like the Chargers and the Chiefs, right, in the division, they're going to play 2 times a year. You can look at the historical head-to-head matchups. How did these two teams end up last year, right? And then kind of compare and contrast their rosters from last year to this year and kind of how different they are, how much better or worse did a team get. So, a lot of it is using the information, using the stats, using the injury report to kind of support your gut feeling. And that's kind of how...
What if some of these people are coming in blind, like we're going through what a line is,
right.
So there is no gut feeling, or maybe they're watching because their boyfriend's team and they're at a bar or whatever it may be. Like I use that example because that's what I'm using with Morgan to kind of get involved. But like some friends are just new to the game or didn't have any skin in the game, and now they want to fucking make 20 extra bucks. If you don't have that gut feeling, is there some teams that we can lean on this year that we know if Patrick Mahomes is out there, oftentimes, their offense is going to be fairly prominent. There's some rules of thumb. Avoid betting on the Cowboys.
General rules of thumb.
Fuck the Jets this year.
Yeah, don't bet on the Jets. Don't bet on the bad teams unless you're getting a ton of points, right? Like if you're getting over 2 scores, right? So 14 plus points sometimes is maybe you look at a home.
10 points, is that too many for the Titans this week at the
I don't think so, because Buffalo's that good. And I mean, you could also go with the general rule of thumb of bet on the good teams, don't bet on the bad teams and whatnot, but that doesn't always work out.
What about betting on team colors?
No, do not let your colors influence.
This weekend? I mean, that's teal versus purple.
I don't know, man. I wouldn't let the colors influence your bet one way or the other. One thing I will say is a kind of general rule of thumb. We talked about the plus and the minus, the favorites and the underdogs a little bit. We saw 10 home underdogs in the first week of the NFL season, which means there was 10 teams who were not the favorite to win the game that were the home team. Anytime there's a home underdog, which is the home team not expected to win, they're always worth a look, because you always have some built-in advantages for home field, your home crowd kind of getting into it. I'm trying to think. Seattle. Yesterday against Denver, a 6.5-point home underdog. So what that meant is Seattle could have lost by up to 6 points and still won a bet had you backed them plus 6.5. They end up winning outright, but you see how much of an advantage it is sometimes to be in your home stadium. You also have to factor in guys being able to sleep in their own bed at night, not having to be in an airplane, not having to be on a team bus, going to a hotel, just kind of being in their zone a little bit more. So that's one general rule of thumb. If you can ever bet a team, or there's a team that is an underdog at home, it's always worth a look.
And I mean, they don't even have to win outright, because you mentioned, these are underdogs we're looking at. So are those teams that are getting the plus points. The Falcons come to mind. They had that win wrapped up, but they shit the bed, which is fine, because that's very Falcon-y thing to do. But at least they covered.
And then exactly. And then you look at another team. I know the game ended in a tie, but you look at Houston, right? They were at home against Indianapolis, getting 8 points. So they could have lost by up to 8 points, and your bet still would have cashed. They end up tying 20-20. But it is sometimes it's not as simple as good team versus bad team. I'm betting the good team even though they're on the road, right? Sometimes there's other things that factor into how the game shakes out.
So if I'm looking at the 54 this week, Patrick Mahomes at home versus a divisional opponent with Keenan Allen out being our prime example from earlier, the line may have started at 3 or 3.5 and started to move towards 4, because more folks are betting on Kansas City. So Vegas is adjusting the line accordingly so that they're not losing as much money at the 3 line. So they've moved the line to 4. And so let's say that it continues to compound like that throughout the next 2 days until Thursday night's game. If you're listening to this, tomorrow night's game, should we be weary of that? And is there a time when you're like, okay, now this much of America is fucking betting on Kansas City. It's moved 4 points. We need to start just thinking about, fuck America. They're stupid anyway. Let's just take the other side.
Yeah, I think there's, a little bit of that. And that's called, chasing steam, or fading or following the public. And I think that's another good general rule of thumb.
Fading the public is a great idea.
If you are brand new to sports betting, and let's say that you're around somebody that has an idea of what sports betting is, ask them which side the public is on for a game, right? And that's usually where the dollars and tickets coming in on one side. Like Denver versus Seattle, I'll use that as another example. The public all over Denver. Every public bettor, every public ticket, every public dollar was on Denver. What does that mean, though? Vegas, the sports books, the people that set the lines needed Seattle last night. In a general rule of thumb, it's never a bad idea to also fade the public, especially when it's skewed. Like if it's like a 55-45 split, okay, like maybe it's not as significant.
That's not a big one.
But like
70-30.
Last night was like an 80-20 with Denver and Vegas, or Denver and Seattle. And you saw Seattle just come out and win the game outright. So always look like the Chiefs right now are going that's not a good example, but like whenever there's a big team.
I think the Chiefs cover, and I think they also pump the over by scoring 31.
You do like it.
I like them. I think they're very, very good. I think that they're pissed off with everyone thinking they were Tyreek Hill based. And Patty,
they look good,
Sky Moore, they have, MVS, Hardman, they have a lot of players.
Juju.
Yeah, Juju is a one, and then you have Kelsey, who's just a behemoth. So, yes. I mean, it'll be a very interesting dynamic, but at the same time, we wanted to have folks in here to kind of give them the lay of the land. So,
yeah.
FanDuel, ask your friends who the public is betting on. Make sure you understand where the line came from or has shifted to. And then let's talk a little bit about Denver and the Colorado Buffs and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Any of them worth a look this week? Broncos are coming off a rough loss. If we wanted to go to the bar this weekend, if we wanted to have an app downloaded, what are some bets that you kind of like? If you were going to get folks into gambling by listening to this podcast this week, we're going to tell them download FanDuel.
Yep.
Maybe shoot us a message. We'll send you a referral code. But what do we like this week? Early lines. It's Wednesday. Wow. Tell everybody about it. Maybe they'll be calling for Aniello to come back and give them some more winners.
Maybe, yeah. There's some interesting games out there, and I'll also, a little plug here. I do a full betting primer that comes out every day on Friday, which is essentially my favorite plays of the weekend for the week in the NFL. I also do the Football Friday show, so that's essentially the primer in verbal communication form. So check us out online at milehighsports.com at the end of the week before you lock in your weekend wagers. But let me pull up my old handy-dandy sports book here. And there was a couple of games that caught my eye off the bat here. One of them being that Monday Night Football game with the Vikings and the Eagles. I think that's going to be a very, very exciting matchup personally, and that's close to even money, so you can essentially bet either side and get a similar payout there. So I guess if there's one line that kind of jumped out to me at the first glance that I really liked, I kind of am inclined to take, and this is a weird one because they're not a great team, kind of like Detroit this week at home against Washington.
I like that one as well. I think this is where Dan Campbell rights the ship. He's like, we're not going to go into this loser mentality. I think this is a great place for them to steal a win because every win for them is stealing.
Yeah. Another one that's interesting here, too, is I've seen Indianapolis has lost their last 7 games on the road in Jacksonville. So, their last 7 games in Jacksonville, they haven't even won one.
So, can we consider that? Because, there's a new quarterback. Yeah, but there's a new quarterback. There's a new coach. Like, how much of this does 7 years of road, should we take all of that into consideration?
You have to take it with a grain of salt just because different regimes, different quarterbacks, different coaching staffs, as you kind of alluded to. But I also think there's some validity there because what that means is historically the Colts have overlooked Jacksonville to a degree, or historically they just haven't made that trip well, whatever it might be. Remember, the Colts lost to Jacksonville in a win-and-in game at the end of the regular season last year. And so that's what I'm saying about sometimes it's not always the smartest thing just to bet on the better team or the perceived better team. Look, Indianapolis almost lost to Houston last week of all teams, right? So it's one of those situations where maybe I'm not going to bet Jacksonville to win outright, but I'm looking at Jacksonville, home underdog, as we alluded to. They're getting over a field goal. They're getting 4.5 points. Pair that with the historical struggles for Indianapolis. Look, it's something I have to consider.
I like it.
I don't hate it. It's just like that's how I kind of come to my formulate my opinions. And also, let me say this:
I like how you look at it much differently than I do. And sometimes you come to the same conclusion. Like you're looking at the Jags, and I'm thinking, oh, they're for whatever reason, Trevor Lawrence is going to bounce back or what. But my realistic thought was, I think the Lions have enough firepower to outlast Carson Wentz, especially when he is a little bit clumsy with the ball. So that was a great reason to see them come. I kind of have them. They're a 2-point favorite according to some books, but I like that bet this weekend. So, we may have different reasons to get to the same end zone, but different routes to get to the same end zone. But nonetheless, we end up on the same line on that. So that's a fun thing about gambling.
It's very interesting because it's similar wavelengths, right? And I think everybody has a general idea about these teams if you watch enough sports, right? But sometimes it's a belief in a certain team one way or the other. I'll use an example of this again. I was all over Pittsburgh in week 1. against Cincinnati. It seemed like the public, the world was on Cincinnati, right? The darling child Bengals who won the AFC last year. I said, you're going to give me 7 points with arguably the best head coach in the NFL and Mike Tomlin and a good defense? Sign me up for that. Maybe it's not, quote-unquote, the sexy play or the popular play, but sometimes you have enough belief in a coaching staff or a player or a defensive unit that, it warrants, especially because that's the other thing, too, is like, I hate to keep going back to this game as an example, but Denver-Seattle, once again.
No,
right?
We have to, because not only is that resonate with our local audience, but also it's the most freshly on our mind.
And as we were talking about fading the public and whatnot, Denver-Seattle closed yesterday at Denver -6.5. So Denver had to win by basically a touchdown in order for that bet to cover against the spread. But they opened back in May after they had acquired Russell Wilson -3.5. So we saw this line because of the hype around Denver, the hype around Russell Wilson, Nathaniel Hackett. We saw it go from 3.5 to 4.5 to 5.5, all the way up to 6.5. That's public steam. That's public money, public love, public enamor with the Denver Broncos driving the line up, even though odds makers, the people that are smartest with this stuff, initially set the line at 3.5. That's another interesting way to look at it.
That is a good idea, because obviously, they are smarter than us. Everyone
way smart. They're some of the smartest people in the world, believe me.
It's the most preposterous concept in the world that how sharp they are at this, but it's tried and true by these people. So don't take it for granted. When you see something that smells fishy, you're like, this doesn't make sense. Why is 90% of the money on one team, but the line is steadfast there? It means that Vegas is just reaping all the benefits and they know they have one locked in. And you usually see a couple of those traps throughout the season, but the best way to know that you're not the mouse going after the cheese is by making sure you're kind of doing a little bit of research. So I think that's obviously, a key component is don't come in just completely blind, but if you are, gamble responsibly.
That's the biggest thing, man, is like you never want to find yourself in some hot water. And like, have I thrown down a couple extra bucks than I probably should have time to time? Sure. I'm pretty sure everybody does. But yeah, you got to gamble responsibly, man. 1-800-522-4700. I have that gambling hotline memorized in my head from all the reads I've had to do.
I like where your head's at. But before we go, Aniello, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to goof off with us. Give us a little insight into your brain and how you operate during the football season. We're fired up. Man. We have 4 more months of this gauntlet, and so they're going to be seeing a lot more of our gambling content. We're going to be having some Mile High Life and Mile High Sports happy hour events. We're going to team up with some local restaurants as well. Before we go, though, let everyone know, what are your socials? What are your drive time hours? Where they can find all of your information if they want to follow you gambling or if they just want to follow your sports insight. All the above.
Yeah, dude, I am married to the game, as I like to say sometimes. I'm out of college and, just moved down closer to the studio as well, so I'm just completely locked in on sports. Like, this is pretty much all I do for a living right now, and, you can check me out, milehighsports.com. Follow me on social media, @MediaByAP. My full-time day job, you could say, is as the digital media director here at Mile High Sports, so I help, manage all of our social properties across Mile High Sports and Mile High Life, Kip, which is something you're very involved with, so looking forward to that. But co-host of the Afternoon Drive program, 4 to 6 p.m., 98.1 FM, 107.5 HD3. And you can also stream the show live on Twitter @MediaByAP, @Mile High Sports. So, yeah, man, always hit me up. That's my favorite thing, though, is building a community. So if, anyone out there is listening who still has no clue what sports betting is, hit me up. We'll go grab a drink. We'll break it down. We'll have some fun with it. At the end of the day, I'm a sports fan first, but now I'm a big-time sports bettor. Sports are my life, especially with our Dallas Cowboys being pitiful. I've just pivoted now to a general sports fan. So let's have some fucking fun, huh?
God damn, we're going to be so bad at football.
Yeah, we suck, Kip.
But luckily, I'm a college football fan. We have LSU this weekend, Mississippi State. You'll hear Chris and I talk about SEC recaps earlier in the episode because pretty much our happiness dictates it. And then also we've got a dank-ass dinner planned for this weekend. So y'all stay tuned, and thank you again to our sponsors, Standing Akimbo. Don't forget they have M's Ice Cream this Saturday. That means that even if you just want some ice cream, it's totally free. Swing on through. You don't have to have your med card. But while you're there, if you don't have your med card, grab the coupon to get $25 off getting your med card. I can guarantee you it'll pay for itself before Christmas just by the money you save and the great products you can get from Standing Akimbo. Shout out to our friends over at Seed & Smith, Shop Callie's, Batch Extracts, Mile High Life, and all the others. We love you dearly, and next week we'll have a new guest for you. Y'all get ready. Cheers.